Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about cultural changes. And I specifically want to get into, eventually, because I'm going to tell some stories first, of why you should be very aware of how fast the culture changes and how this should affect how you design and develop your video games. Because you can quickly get stuck with a game that seems laughable or archaic very quickly, and not because of the graphics, but because of your inability to predict cultural changes. But I will get to that. Now, I have a whole video about why I don't like cultural references, and I will link it below. And just to give you the synopsis right now, I don't like cultural references for the same reason I don't like a lot of humor of a certain kind. I don't like anything in your game that makes the player feel like they're not getting it and are being excluded. I don't like anything that makes the player feel like an other. Like, oh shoot, this game is having fun and I'm not invited to the party. And certain humor can do that, but cultural references do that a lot. If you're trying to make fun of a musician or a politician or some current event, within 5 or 10 years, there are going to be a lot of people who forget it, don't know what you're talking about. They were a kid then, they didn't even know about it, and now they're a young adult and they're trying to play this game. They're like, who's George Bush? Who's Britney Spears? Blah. So I don't like cultural references. But similarly, I'm going to talk about cultural changes, how our society changes in all kinds of ways, and how you have to be very careful about that. Now, I want to start this. Today is exactly 11 years since my mom passed away. I'm filming this in mid-September. So I've been thinking about her a lot. And I've been going through family photos. I've taken the thousands of family photos that I've digitized and I've broken them into folders based on person. Even if that means I have to duplicate the picture in the different folders. Because that way I can click on, I have a folder for my mom. I can click on it and I can see every scanned photo I have that has my mom in it. And one of them is this picture. I remember my mom describing this picture to me. It's a jeans dance. Now, one thing you'll notice, by the way, that's my mom right in the middle, in the jeans and the white shirt kind of profile. She just looks really happy. She's obviously smiling. She's dancing. The first thing I noticed was, why is it only girls? Is it not boy girl or whatever? Now, I don't remember what she said. Either this was a gym class or it was an after school activity. I don't remember which one it was, but it was only girls. So the girls had to dance with girls. And you had to wear a particular kind of shoe with a particular kind of sole, or you weren't allowed on the gym floor because of the way it was coded. If you didn't have a shoe like that, you had to wear your sock. You had to just go out in your socks. Notice some of the girls have shoes and some of them are wearing just their socks because people didn't have enough money to afford a special soled shoe. And so if you didn't have it, it wasn't like they were going to go out and buy it, so they danced in their socks. But I always went back and said, well, why was it called a jeans dance? And also, why are all the girls wearing blue jeans? And she said, oh, when I went to high school, and this is high school, this is probably about 1950, plus or minus a year. She said, when I went to high school, girls weren't allowed to wear jeans. And I was like, what? I mean, when I was in high school in the early 80s, jeans were practically a uniform. I think everybody, boys and girls wore jeans. I mean, occasionally you'd see a kid in khakis, but it was almost always jeans. And I'm like, well, what would happen if the girl came to school wearing jeans? My mom was like, oh, they'd get sent home. They'd get sent home with a note. Their parents might be called to pick them up. How dare your daughter show up to school wearing pants? Not just jeans, pants. Girls couldn't wear pants. And I was like, oh. Now, there's obviously been a huge cultural change since 1950. But one thing you have to remember, the people in this photo are range in age from maybe 15 to 17. Some of these people are still alive. And some of them still think that way, and some of them still vote. So let that settle in for a second. Now here's one for me. I'll give one from my era. I grew up before smartphones, cell phones, anything like that. I grew up with landlines. And the rule was if your phone rang, you answered it. The phone ring, the nearest person would scramble to get it. Now, of course, occasionally you'd get a marketing call and you'd say like, oh, my mom and dad isn't here. Or if they answered, like, I'm not interested. After answering machines came out, which came out when I was a teenager, when answering machines came out, you could get messages, but you usually still answered the phone if you were home. As spam calls got worse, we stopped answering the phone, and most people lived a life of screening phone calls through your answering machine. And then, of course, once cell phones came into existence and they always had voicemail on them, people just stopped answering their phone altogether. To this day, if someone calls me, I probably don't pick up unless I know they're going to call me and their name pops up, which means they're calling me from a number they have in my contact list. Because maybe I'm watching a TV show, maybe I'm cooking a meal, maybe I'm walking the dog. There's a lot of reasons why you can't pick up, and then sometimes I just don't feel like answering the phone. This is a huge change from even when I was a teenager, where the phone rang, you scrambled to get it. It is a cultural shift. For an experiment, right now, you can look around you right now in whatever room you're in. There is something in your environment that's going to be gone or massively transformed in 20 or 30 years. You may not be able to guess what it is, but I guarantee you there's something in your room that is going to be viewed differently. That kids born now, in 20 years, they either won't understand the thing or they'll view it as laughably archaic. There's all these videos on YouTube of kids looking at old tech, like Game Boys and Walkmans, and like, what is this? Now, a big question is, what is that thing going to be? Is it going to be tech? Is your TV going to be laughable? That big flat screen 60-inch TV on your wall, is that going to be laughable in a few years? Is it going to be your console game, your game console? Is it going to be your smartphone? Are kids going to be like, these idiots didn't have neural laces and they had to stare at a screen rather than just see it in their mind's eye? Who knows? And it might even not even be tech. It might be a societal norm. I mentioned in one of my videos about my idea about clothing printers. Maybe in 20 or 30 years, people are going to go, these gross people rewore their clothes rather than printing out a fresh set every morning. But they may even be looking back at us right now and go, those idiots thought colors or fabrics were specific to a particular gender. Or, they thought there were only two genders. Those morons. Just stop here. Don't try to guess where this is going to go, because you're probably going to guess wrong. And that's kind of my point. If you're making a game and your game is dependent on you predicting what cultural changes are going to happen and you're hedging a lot of your game on those predictions, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be laughably, horrifically wrong, and your game will look dated. So my recommendation to you as someone who's made a lot of brand new settings and new IP is you can pick a game type where you can avoid guessing altogether. Fantasy games, very cartoony games, historically set games. Like this is a game from the 14th century medieval period of Europe. You can just pick the tech that was appropriate for that. You don't have to do any guessing. If you do want to make a game in the future, like I did with Fallout or The Outer Worlds, what you want to do is you want to obviously put it forward. Here's one possible future. And even try to indicate it diverged from our timeline at this point. Like Fallout, we like to talk about they never made chips. They kept using vacuum tubes. They never made transistors. Or in Outer Worlds, we're like, corporations and monopolies were never prevented, and so the future grew up around corporate monopolistic practices. That way you can have a future which you yourself, the developer, are telling the player, this is not what I think our future is going to be. This is a possible future based on this what if idea. If you try to do anything other than that, I guarantee you will make a game that will be laughably wrong way sooner than you think. So please, my recommendation to you is don't try to predict what the future will definitely be. Either try to make a timeline divergent future, or just stick to genres that don't need to make any technological or social or cultural prediction whatsoever. You'll be happier, and I think your game will have longer legs because of it.